Supercars and motorsport go hand in hand, but how does the road car division of a Formula 1 team develop their first car in over 20 years and only their second in over 26 years? And then how would they create a company renowned for making some of the best and fastest supercars on sale right now off the back of this car? This is the story of the McLaren MP4-12C. McLaren Cars was founded in 1985 after Ron Dennis took over McLaren in 1980. They were produced at F1 between 1992 and 1998 after development began in 1988. After that, the company would be dormant until 2003 when the Mercedes SLR McLaren was unveiled. This was a result of collaboration between the two companies due to their Formula 1 tyres and they were going to production the following year. Mercedes were responsible for the design, with McLaren being in charge of everything else, and it eased them into design and production. Production would last until 2010, which was the same year that McLaren Cars was relaunched under the new name McLaren Automotive. In 2011, the £50 million McLaren production centre was officially opened. Behind the scenes of all this, McLaren began developing the car that would relaunch the brand. This began in 2007 when they purchased a Ferrari 360 to use as a test mule for their engine. They then used an Ultima GTR to test the brakes and suspension for the final car. These two were known as the MV1 and MV2, with the MV3 being another 360 which was used to test the exhaust system. McLaren then built two of their own prototypes, the CP1 and CP2, which used the carbon monocoque chassis used in the final car. The brand tested the performance and temperatures of components. The McLaren MP4-12C was revealed in September 2009 and went on sale in 2010. The design work began in 2008 when McLaren hired legendary designer Frank Stevenson as design director. The 12C used a lot of carbon fibre to keep the dry weight at just 1,301 kilos. This is mainly due to the one-piece carbon fibre tub, which weighs only 80 kilograms, whilst also being incredibly rigid. Inside, it has a narrow centre console to keep the driver more central, and it could be spec'd in an asymmetric configuration to make the driver feel more involved. Also unusually, the 12C uses hydraulic suspension, which needs no anti-roll bars. This setup means it can be stiff at higher speeds and more forgiving at slower ones. The engine used was the McLaren M838T, which was used in most McLarens up to 2021, and the modified version is still in use today. The design is based off an engine designed for IndyCar, but it never raced. The 3.8 litre twin-turbo V8 puts out 592 horsepower on launch. This was later upgraded to 616, which was retrofitted to older cars. Mated to this engine was a 7-speed dual-clutch automatic gearbox, which had a feature where the driver could pre-select the next gear. This resulted in a 2.8 seconds 0 to 60 time and a top speed of 218 miles per hour. In 2012, the convertible Spider model was revealed. It only weighed 40 kilos more than the coupe, as the chassis had been designed with a convertible option in mind. The MP4-12C HS was revealed in March 2012. HS stands for High Sport, and this version had different features and aerodynamics inspired by the GT3 car, with new bumpers front and rear and a different rear wing, with an increase of 75 horsepower. Only 10 were ever made. Another model based on the 12C was the X1, a one-off build by McLaren Special Operations and displayed at the 2012 Pebble Beach Concours d'Elegance. The styling was reportedly inspired by classic American and French cars. In 2011, McLaren restarted GT racing with the McLaren MP4-12C GT3, which first completed at Spa in British GT3. It had a reduced power output of 492 horsepower to meet regulations and used a 6-speed gearbox instead, which saved 80 kilograms. It competed in the 2012 FIA GT1 World Championship under Hexis Racing, with the team coming second overall and the McLaren taking 5 victories. Production of the MP4-12C ended in 2014 when it was replaced by the 650S, which had new bodywork and an upgraded engine. So how was the MP4-12C received? It won awards in the Middle East for Car of the Year and Supercar of the Year, and was praised by journalists for being one of the fastest supercars around, both on track and in a straight line. Around 3,400 were sold, with prices starting at £168,500. This was good for a brand only beginning to properly build cars again. Whilst around £80 million was lost in the first 2 years of sales, this also included development costs of the P1. McLaren Automotive made a profit before tax in 2013. Even if it can't be considered a sales success, the 12C benefited McLaren in more ways than can be seen on paper. The technology developed, such as the carbon shell and the engine, were used as the core of almost all McLarens for the next 5 years, and even longer, and it put their name on the map perfectly, with being competitive against the big names and being something a bit different. It set out what they were going to produce: incredibly fast supercars that stood out, but could also be comfortable and somewhat refined when needed. But as is always the case, the first step was the hardest, but once the 12C was in place, it made it a lot easier to grow, and new cars are now being released by the working brand every year, with each being a step forwards. So despite being a somewhat forgotten model, the MP4-12C, along with the P1, was probably the brand's most important car, as it got the ball rolling for one of the most important supercar brands at the moment, that was able to translate racing success to incredible road-going cars.